you everyone for joining us for the panel. So I'll kick off the discussion with Rajeev. Rajeev, how do we drive digital initiatives, including analytics in a supply chain environment, and how do we realize the objectives and drive change in an organization?
I think a very interesting question, and this question has remained same for last 20 years. That if I recall, I've gone through 4 transformational journeys in last almost 20 years, big transformation. The most important thing was that when we started it first time in 2005, it took me almost 6 months to close the first part of these journeys, that is defining the objective. Your objective can be of 3 types. One is, if my other competitors have done it, I should also do it. That can be one objective. The second thing, your digital journey can be a status symbol also, that everyone is going for it, we should also go for it. And the third thing is that you really mean something out of it, that these are the 3 key areas which we want to achieve through the digital journey. So I think the most important thing is to decide that why you are going for the journey. The second most important part is the role of senior management in all these journeys, that it is like walk the talk. When you start this journey, it is not that the role of senior management is only from the kickoff and then finally cake cutting ceremony at the completion of the initiative. It is not like that. You have to be part of every stage of implementation of this transformation journey. So I think the role of senior management also becomes a very critical factor of success for digital journeys. The third most important part is you need not to be too democratic. We all use a word called standard operating procedure in our day-to-day communication. What is the meaning of SOP? SOP means less democracy. You know, if you have to work in a standard manner, that standard operating procedure, you have to go this way or that way, it definitely means less democratic, and it should be. If you do not have right SOPs, you cannot succeed in a digital journey. That you may give enough time for discussion, but once it is finalized, SOPs are SOPs, they become non-negotiable thing in any of such journeys. You cannot change all these practices off and on. The other most important part which is there is usually what happens that we never take a quick assessment about the capability within the organization before we embark on these journeys. So that check is also needed, and change management should happen even before you embark on this journey. That you start educating people that what type of change you are going to bring in, how it is going to help them. See, all communications have to be very, very positive, and they should be in a way that it is going to make your life better, rather than communicating that now we will have a real-time control over everything and we can review your performance on real-time basis. I think that cannot be the objective. So the communication of the management, change management, they also become very, very critical factor when we go for this journey. And basically it is a 3 to 5 year process. You cannot expect results overnight. So that is what from my learnings from the implementations, which I have gone through 3 to 4 implementations. 3 I was successful, 4th I failed miserably, because we changed the definition of objective. What we decided and what we actually did, there was a difference, and that resulted in complete failure of that whole project. So that is what I would like to say on this.
Very good thoughts, Rajeev. So in fact, another one for you is on, how do you implement a logistics control tower, and how do you, let's say, focus on few KPIs rather than a lot of KPIs in a control tower?
Yeah. So I think this is another very interesting question. In our organization, we have implemented logistic control tower for last 4 years. Again, the same thing, that walk the talk, what has happened. So we started it that we are implementing this The goal is to look at the four most important things which are affecting our operations. We will ignore rest of the things for the time being, and that is exactly what we did. Second thing, we stopped all PowerPoint presentation within the group. See, today, the UltraTech cement businesses, we are spread across 60 plants in different parts of the country. There may be number of warehouses, number of regional offices, zonal offices. It is practically impossible to meet even your colleagues also. See, I may not even be able to remember the number of plants or number of people who are working, but the question is with the logistic control tower, now at least there is a common understanding that we look at the 5 KPIs every day. We connect digitally, there is no PowerPoint presentation. I just look at the slide of the plant and I can talk for almost 1.5 hours to the concerning plant head, that in which direction we are going. And last but not the least, the message which was conveyed and which we really did was, it was to improve the work-life balance of people. That today I can definitely say that at least 90% people in the plant, they leave their office by 6 o'clock in the evening. The intent is that when everything is digital, everything is visible on your screen, then why you need to remain in office for working? Why, if at all any emergency is there, you can handle it from your home also. So it has definitely contributed a big way in improving the work-life balance of the people also. Besides, of course, operating results are definitely getting addressed on real-time basis. But I tell you, I will consider work-life balance improvement as a bigger achievement than all other things.
How does data analytics help in supply chain of perishable goods, and how is Jubilant Foodworks using this?
Thanks, Arihant. Great question. I hope most of you are aware about the Domino's 30-minute delivery promise. Some of you might know that we launched 20-minute delivery promise in Bangalore. So I'll talk a little bit about what goes behind fulfilling that promise, because and I'll talk more from a supply chain standpoint. There is a lot happens on the operation side as well. So we're one of the few pizza companies who actually stretch our pizza fresh from a dough. So right from having a dough required for pizza to cheese to toppings, all of these are fresh elements and has a very limited shelf life. So it's very critical for us to make sure that the right amount of ingredients are available in the store. We are present in more than 400 cities in India, and we have about 8 factories and centers for distribution really. So it's very important for us to know that right from our factories all the way up to our store, all our ingredients are moving under required temperature compliance. So that's where the big data analytics play a critical part. Right from at the heart of it really is the forecasting engine. My ability to predict how much cheese, how much dough, how much ingredients are needed everyday basis. Each store is the first and the foremost part for my supply chain to be optimized. Then it all feeds back into, if I need to manage that kind of supply really, how do I move that supply from my 8 factories to 400 plus cities and 2000 stores all over India? How do I ensure that I have an exact visibility of where my trucks are, what is the temperature compliance of the products I'm actually managing? And then it goes further back, if I need to, 31st is a big day for us. Last year, there was a time when we were getting about 2,500 orders per minute across India. So for me to prepare for that really, how do I manage my production schedule? How do I manage my trays? As simple as that, how do I move that from factory to throughout the country really? So across each stage, we have done digitalization to make sure that we have the required planning, observing and controlling capabilities. So we're using advanced analytics to create a forecasting engine which accurately tells me what kind of raw material is needed at each store everyday basis. And that makes sure that when somebody is ordering a pizza, that pizza is available, the material is available, and we can deliver that in 20 minutes. There is no out of stock. We are also in a business where wastage can be a significant part of the cost really. So the accurate forecasting also helps us ensure that we are not wasting any food as such. We also use IoT sensors to track our trucks, to track the compliance of the cold storage we have, to make sure that we know if ever that any batch has a temperature compliance, we are able to address that and scratch the batch and make sure that we are able to send the cheese as such. Uh, Imagine so many trucks moving from distribution center to all the way up to storage. It's a massive opportunity to use the right transport management, and that's where a lot of the analytics actually helps to make sure that our route planning, our inventory supplies are planned in a way that we are able to get the landed cost at a most optimal way while fulfilling the objectives around our service levels. And obviously, all of this is managed through a very good tracking on and dashboards to make sure we are able to understand, track, and take a quick action on all of our inventory processes.
The next one is for you, Anirban. So, how does empowerment of enterprises with supply chain visibility, transparency, track and traceability across transportation routes help?
Thanks, Arihant, for sharing your thoughts and other co-panelists as well. I think a use of technology and digital will bring a necessary transparency into a whole process, starting from demand sensing to the physical flow of goods. But I think use of technology is something what Rajeev ji also spoke about. I think selection of right technology is going to play a very important role. It's not about that one size fits all for all the solution that problem that you have. So in our business, quite a few steps that we have taken over the last few years. We looked at in terms of if there are some solutions which is required for our in-plant management is something which relevant for us. We adopted those and we've been running those solutions for the last many years. Similarly, for in terms of visibility, track and trace, we have seen there are solutions, but is that solution is going to give you benefit to your organizations? If you look at in our business in cement, 25% of the spend is on logistics cost, which is quite a significant cost for our business. So every leg in your business will play a very important role in terms of our decisions, right? So what we have done, looked at all the data points and started using some of the data points for our route to the market, right? When you look at route to the market, we have seen the routes which are supposed to be followed using the data, that something can be avoided, right? And therefore you can bring your costs down, right? That's something, one of the solutions we have done. Secondly, in terms of in our trade, there are a lot of nuances in terms of a lot of backloading, diversions, because the cement bag is around 350, 360 rupees, one bag, and therefore you look at a lot of inefficiency into your whole process. So what we have done, we looked at complete tracking of entire shipment, and we come up with exception outlier for every route to the market. If there are any ways we can reach out to a customer better, and therefore you bring your cost down. That's number two. Number three, in terms of, so far cement industry have been looking into more into evacuations. What we have done in our business, slightly we changed the shift in the gear in terms of looking at the service parameters. So looking at, right, for example, Amazon, you look at some delivery, promise delivery by 12 o'clock, by tomorrow you'll get the delivery. So what we have started also in our business, if the orders is expected or by 12 o'clock, you will give a promise of 6 p.m. or maybe 8 p.m. the same day. Similarly, any orders received at 6 p.m. in the same day, you get it in the next day morning 10 o'clock. We are reasonably around 75-80%, is a long way to go. But in terms of looking at this data points, we also kind of come up with some predictable deliveries. So what we started, we are the pattern in terms of this particular trade to this particular channel. We have seen there is a 70% order comes on maybe on Monday or Wednesday on Thursday of the day, right? So we look at, if there are some kind of a, solution at the plant level, we may look at preloading of trucks, look at stock on wheels. Those things have also been done in our business. The fourth element in terms of, as I spoke about, the transparency, right, in terms of the leakage. So we have seen using those data points with the exception outliers, we have seen a lot of benefit in our business over the last, many years. In my view, I think it's not about only that we have to do a technology or we have to do a digitizations. We have to really look at which solution is going to give your end objective to meet, right? That's number one. And therefore, in my understanding and my view, I think the timely adoption of technology will really help create visibility, transparency, and efficiency into the whole process. It's not about that I would like to go for this technology, but it's important to this solution. Will that be benefit for you to really adopt or not? That's from my side. Yeah.
Thank you, Rajeev. So the next one is for you, Chiranjoy. So you especially coming from Mankind Pharma. So how does digital twin help in supply chain? And the second one essentially is how do you leverage data analytics for large SKU supply chains? Because for
Yeah.
you essentially, especially on the sales side, you manage very large number of SKUs.
Sure. So I'll take the digital twin question first. So digital twin has several benefits. I'll talk about two or three today. So one is moving from reactive to proactive, right? So for example, during the monsoon season, one of our plants in the northeast went down, and it used to cater to most of the demand in south and east of the country. What the digital twin enabled us to do that even before this event occurred, to play out the scenario of what happens if it goes down, and therefore what are the costs and therefore the fulfillment rates for my North India plant to fulfill it. So that sort of a simulation is enabled by a digital twin, so that we don't have to wait for the event to occur, but within the SOP, we define the resiliency planning as well. Second one is digital twin is also, and that's sort of the gold standard that we want to move towards, is not just have our internal supply chain, but tie together the true end-to-end, which is connected with our customers, which are chemists and the doctors, right, to our suppliers. Because a lot of times, in an ideal world, all of us want to be just in time, right? But our suppliers may not have the capability. So how do we sort of model in to the digital twin things such as the capacity that my suppliers have, so that if I have a sudden demand sent somewhere, I can source the raw materials and produce it in my plants. So yeah, and to answer to your question about multiple SKUs, right? Large number of SKUs. Now, within the large number of SKUs, so one is when you have SKUs running into thousands, your raw materials, your intermediaries also run into sometimes tens of thousands. And then it's not just the product sort of fragmentation, it's also the distribution fragmentation. You have, lakhs of chemists, doctors who we are getting data from. So, however, I think most of us by now, the companies sitting here, have figured out the ERP problem of capturing primary and secondary sale. I guess that's something that we solved over the last 10, 15 years. What we still, and I speak from experience, a very tactical thing that we still don't get right as an organization is getting the master data in order, right? The product hierarchy is in order. So even if you have 5,000 products in your portfolio, they typically have a product hierarchy, right? And therefore, where it becomes critical in supply chain planning is, as Rahul was saying, demand forecasting. It's not always possible to forecast demand at a SKU POS level, right? Point of sales level. So therefore, at what level you aggregate, forecast, and then disaggregate, or you actually forecast at a disaggregated level and then aggregate, becomes really important, and there hierarchies become important. The second part is obviously segmentation. We have been doing this for ages now, but particularly wherever we have large volume, we can definitely do forecasting. Wherever we don't have large volume, obviously the policies also have to be set accordingly, right? So if it is a slower moving item or a highly seasonal item or a highly disease-based item, endemic-based item, then we typically would keep a low inventory. However, we need to sense the demand early. So forecasting may not be possible because the flu outbreaks do not follow an exact calendar cadence, but we should get from our medical representatives, doctor network, indicators early, so that 15 days before it actually hits a certain level, we are informed and our factories start producing and our supply chain starts delivering. So moving from forecasting to sensing for those particular products become really important.
So I'll come to you, Abhishek. The last one on, what's the role of smart mining of data metrics in synchronizing planning and execution for freight carriage?
Great question, this part of it. So data mining for us, so let me just introduce before we start. I come from Budweiser family. So the beers that you drink, from Corona, Budweiser, Hoegaarden, to Hayward's, all those big beer brands you see across comes from some of our factories that we have, breweries that we have. And our co-panelists, Rajeev sir, Anirban, Chinwa, all talked about demand sensing, all talked about being able to manage large SKUs. But there is a second part of the whole planning process as to what actually happened, right? Did we really go as per the plans, or did it change during the situation of brewing or manufacturing, saying the certain raw material was not available, or certain routes didn't go as planned? So what's the actuals that happened? And can we feed this back into the loop, saying how much true the planning went? And believe me, when I say that the plan accuracy could be as a very high number, very high 90s, but the actuals on the day to or day of operations or day of planning or day of execution came down to half of what we originally planned for. And this won't be a surprise for all of us. We all know the realities of the ground. We all understand certain routes didn't get fulfilled, certain rates didn't get matched, and things like those. And more or less, let me say, very openly that we're missing the data. We do not have streamlined data which can say that today's market rate for spot for this route is this, or it is 30% higher than what we had originally planned for, right? And the very basic reason is that data is missing, the feedback loop is missing, and the planners or the schedulers or the transport leaders that we have are not being able to sense that part up front. Is it part of the problem? Very much. If we have solutions, some places it is becoming a solution. So just to give you an idea, for demand sensing, there are a lot of streamlined market data coming in from authorized parties who can say what are the adverse events happening around us. Can we have, for example, Chennai floods that are coming in? The flood happened much later. The information about that cyclone was much earlier available, and there were sources which can predict that happened. And we have options to be able to say we don't route out to Chennai or to Andhra Pradesh for certain of days much in advance. So these are the places where certain amount of data is available. What you started seeing is also the fact that we can build our own data depending on what you bought, how much you bought, what was planned versus actuals. If you build that process to be able to mine that data, you might have your own spot rates available which can predict what is my spot rate going to be tomorrow. Is it 100% accurate? No. Is it good 60-70%? Yes. And that helps us to allow to say, should I go with a contracted rate tomorrow or should I go with a spot rate tomorrow, is very much possibility today. And you will be surprised to hear this, that sometimes the spot rate market in India is cheaper than the contracted market that you have that you've done with yourself. So is it a good idea to go with a spot rate tomorrow? Maybe yes, maybe not, because the availability of the truck is still under question, right? So this part of the process is where we say the data is still not there. But yes, we can build it, we can provide the indexes, we can build our own indexes for that matter, right? So that's one big part of it. Then broadening the whole topic, do we have sufficient amount of possibilities to get a data? Or is that data important enough to answer the problem that we raised in the first space, right? Is the impact that of data that we're missing 2%, 25%, or not even linked to this topic, is still a question that we need to answer as we go forward. Originally, we assumed that weather would be a critical factor for in our industry. In some countries, yes, it makes a huge difference. But in a country like India, Diwali would be a much bigger factor than a heat wave coming in, right? So this is a part of the problem that we need to look and say, is the importance of data that critical, or should we really define the problem way forward? One of the very important topic Rajeev sir didn't approach, or he loves to say, talk a lot about, is training the people, right? It's very hard to make people understand what they're looking at, right? What they're able to interpret and say, this maths, this analytics, this graph means to say this and this. Do we have to train our people enough to be able to reinterpret that data and say, this is the answer of the problem? Or do we have time on our hands of our leadership to look at that graph, that dashboard, and respond in time? Or do we need another layer under them to be able to respond to that? So that part of being able to train and build our own teams to be able to interpret is very much needed. And this is part of the problem of data mining. You can do a lot of data mining, but who interprets that? How do we respond to that data mining process upfront? So both part of data being available, data wanting to be used, and then the data can be used is the part of the bigger problem that we have to look at.
Absolutely, Abhishek. And in fact, I want to just carry that thought forward with other panelists. A lot of times it is easier to essentially buy new tech. You can have essentially the best of the tech which is essentially available, but how do you solve the underlying data problem, because in a lot of projects you actually see that underlying data is a problem. You can probably live with 5-year-old tech, but not having data is a bigger problem. Any thoughts on?
I can take first. I think everyone should answer on this. And this is a problem, and I've joined Mankind fairly recently. So this is the problem, the first problem I'm trying to solve in my first 6 months. I think what is very important is data governance, and data governance is sort of an umbrella term, so I'll just break it down. So one is master data management, right? Then the transactional data management. So bringing all the data at one place, preferably the cloud, is my belief, but it can be different for different organizations. Because how it manifests ultimately is when you have two different dashboards, the two different functions are seeing, they're looking at different numbers, they meet in an SNOP meeting, they lose confidence in the numbers being shown. Even if they are not off by a lot, but it just kills the change management process. The second one is, getting everything at one place. The second part is getting the right set of people who own the data. For dog's years, it's the IT teams and the technology team who are trying to fix the data, which is never possible, right? That's sort of the second. So identifying the right owners and the stewards. The third part is trying to solve this data problem as close to the source as possible. So if it is your sales force that is capturing the data based on an interaction with the dealership or the distributor, it has to be in that app that the data validation processes are kept and some amount of SOP is trained for the sales force. It cannot be solved by his or her manager or a central data team. So I think those three are at least the foundational things that we need to solve. And this ultimately has to be driven through whether it is the chief operating officer or the CEO, has to drive this in every function as a strategic, because if we want data to be a strategic source, we have to get the source right. Otherwise, any strategy coming out of it is going to be garbage. So it has to be led in a top-down manner.
So my interpretation of the data is something, there are lots of data is available in the systems. And when we go in the office, starting of the morning at 6 o'clock till 10 o'clock, you'll say hundreds of mails are coming with a different form of same data points, right? I think the way we look at in our organization and the way I also interpret the data is something, the exception management. Okay, when I look at any of the solution, any of the dashboards, any of the preparation of data points, I only ask for it, who are the audience, what are the exception for those audience. I may use a chief supply chain officer or something. I look at one data points. Maybe it is not relevant for a plant logistics or maybe the regional logistics aids, right? So this is important, that how do you really interpret, and therefore you look at your exception outlier informations to the respective audience at 80-20 principles. So maybe a top 3 information for the day which is required, and that would be my key takeaways for the day, and I will take it forward to ensure that execution happens. Yeah.
So I think both Chiranjoy and Anirban spoke about how to manage data from different sources, and you can feel the pain that we all go through. So beyond that, I think I can just add a couple of things really. So one is part of the whole digitalization of supply chain is also about having a right instrumentation. Wherever possible, are you able to use technology to capture the data, and that can make a huge difference. And wherever that's not possible, the example Chiranjoy was, how do we really make sure that we have a data capture validation as close to the source as possible? For example, today I can track the temperature of my cheese moving from factory to the store and until it goes onto a pizza topping. But today I don't know, for example, a certain store faced traffic issue because of metro construction or something was banned really. So how do I really get those signals, and how do I enrich that data? And obviously there are a lot of ways in which you can also think about what is the right external data that can come in and enhance that part of it really. So using technology to have a right instrumentation as well as the systems to actually capture data becomes essential part of enriching data over time period.
I think a lot has already been, almost everything is covered by my co-panelist. I'll just pick up few things on data architecture, that we all are quite used to our own comfort zones. And that's how we design the data part, that same set of information, one person will design differently, other person will design in a different manner. And within an organization, there will be 10 sets of data which are going here and there. And when you start any discussion, then everybody will have a different interpretation of that data as per his or her own needs. So the first thing which is needed in any data architecture is all your existing practices should be abolished. You should have only one format, one set of information right from CEO to the lowest level in the hierarchy. There cannot be two sets of information available to anybody. Second point is that it's not the quantity of data, it is the quality, and what Anirban mentioned was managing by exception. I'll give you a simple example that today we are having near about 12 to 15,000 trucks fitted with GPS. I am least interested in knowing that whether my trucks are moving on National Highway 18 or National Highway 50 or 60, it is none of my business. I am only interested in knowing how much percentage of vehicles have breached my geo-fenced routes, how many trucks have violated my speed restrictions, how many vehicles have gone for harsh braking. These are the things I'm really interested in looking at it. So managing by exception is going to be the key in any data management process. So these are the two critical things which we have learned in our experience of the whole architecture.
Thank you. I would just like to thank our esteemed panelists for taking time out from their busy schedule. Thank you for